Tony, welcome to the Chez Show. And you know what? For those of you who might not know Tony Rico, you've dedicated so much time and energy into the sport and built one of the most renowned travel ball organizations in the country. And you've got to watch and develop some of the most phenomenal players that the softball world has ever seen. I think probably most fresh in everybody's mind is, Sis Bates. I don't know if I can scroll through a feed on Twitter and not see Sis's name pop up. And then we were talking about earlier, one of our dear friends and one of your former players, Megan Willis, who seems to come up on this podcast so many times. But I think the reason why she keeps coming up is the level of impact that she's had on the sport. And it's funny. I'm going to go straight to Megan right now because it's like fresh in my mind. All these Women's College World Series games have been replayed, and several Texas games have been played. And to listen to the commentary and to hear the color commentators and play-by-play talk about how Megan is like the only catcher to throw from her knees. In my mind, she is 100% like the pioneer in throwing from her knees. And our team got to benefit from it tremendously. And we've talked about on the podcast how we picked off two people in the same inning. And just on a larger kind of like softball mind, the reason why it was so deceptive is you bring in Kat, who naturally throws a drop ball and a backdoor curve, and you got a right-handed hitter. Megan's a righty catcher. The deception, like you wouldn't be able to tell if she was going to receive it as a strike or whether she was going to pick your ass off on second or first, which we would just take so much joy in picking off people. But I mean, you've spent quite a bit of time, and she was we were talking about you actually a little bit earlier, but can you talk a little bit about your experience with Megan and kind of what she's brought to the game?
Yeah, well, I think I texted you earlier that she's underappreciated, right? Because especially from the branding standpoint, which I believe, is part of what Sis Bates has brought to the field. But I was just watching last week here at the Arizona-Texas game, and Hollowell and Osterman and 10 innings, and that was crazy, Chez. I mean, I think that should be required watching for people that are involved in this game that might have missed that part of that golden era. Watching Megan work, and then the pickoff, right, from a catcher, that's a back-breaking play that turns games around, right? You can have a runner on second base and nobody out. It's the tying run. They're really excited, and then boom, it's done. It turns everything around. Her ability to change a game instantly was well, for me, we knew that right away. We knew that about her coming to our program. I believe that Megan made throwing from her knees, she made it popular. But I have to go back to 1996 when we had a catcher in our organization named Jenny Topping, and she was a left-handed catcher. She went on to play for the Olympic team. And JT, she was a left-handed catcher, so she could pick off of first base. I mean, it was crazy. So we had a 16 and under national game in Midland, Texas, and she picked off three runners off of first base in the same inning.
Oh my
got first base, picked the first one off. John Dakes, who ended up coaching with us later, he screams to you could hear him talking. He screams to the next runner, don't take a big lead. JT picked her off on the second pitch. And then the third batter got on, and you heard Coach John say, "Don't take a lead." And then again, it's the way they bait him, right? Like you talked about Megan, catching the ball here, and you don't know if she's throwing back to the pitcher, she's throwing all the way back. And then JT picked off three. So I can't ignore where Jenny Topping was, because she was the first one I ever saw just dominate back there. But I believe that Megan also built that brand. I mean, I still have a picture behind my chair in my desk of her in her mask, and she knows I talk about this, but what you see are those eyes.
Yeah.
And I've always said, if that picture would have been taken 100 feet away, you would have seen a young lady in catcher's gear, which is great. There's a lot of that. But Megan and her brand and the hair, and I think the Firecrackers were even known for, I think people thought you had to be blonde to play on the team for a certain time. But
Yeah.
special player, and then I think we also mentioned just her IQ, right? Like you come from a generation of players, your cruiser team, Megan, like just the softball IQ and the way you all played the game that's what guys like me, and I know your dad, I know Dean Lappin, and these coaches that you develop an utmost amount of respect for. It's because of how their kids play the game. Winning is winning, but you're playing the game in a certain way. And so, like I even mentioned to you, Ches, I don't know how much it gets mentioned on your show, but you were a hell of a player, and the respect earned, it was just by the way you played the game. So yeah, I'm all about Willis. I'm always going to be a fan of Megan, on and off the field.
Thank you. Yeah, when you, I'm just curious from your perspective, since you've seen so many generations of softball players, what in particular kind of stands out to you? I know you talked about the way that we played the game, but can you kind of elaborate on that?
Well, it's for me coming over to softball and then coming over from, having the baseball background. So you don't come to softball looking to respect, the coaches or anything. You come over thinking that you know everything, right? Until you lose really bad to some guys that have been coaching 20 years in softball. But I was never, and has still to this point, it's not about the championship that we won or the coaches that we beat. It's getting to know the people of softball. That's been the story. And so the way you play the game is basically, having ownership, having an idea of what you want to do, right? Having that confidence of what you expect to do with the at-bat versus the worry over the outcome of the at-bat, because we're judged by the results. That's a big part of it. So playing the game the right way is that pitch-to-pitch stuff. It's talked about more and more nowadays, but, back in the day in the mid-90s, you had to search a lot harder to find a good swing in the mid-90s. You don't have to scroll more than 10 seconds now online to find great looking swings. The physical component of the game is there. But Ches, I just think the way that you play the game is what you can take with you off the field when you're done playing, because now it's how do you relate to people? How do you observe, how do you make observations and make decisions on a daily basis, whether it's in traffic or, your social surroundings, whatever it is. And so that's the biggest takeaway for me. And I think that our players would say that's where if I've got my a-hole hat on, which was, as all coaches wear of it at certain times, it's because of what do you see and what are you doing about it? It's, basically this. It's a little different context, but really pays off in the long run.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of where you started in softball, and then kind of guide me to maybe your first national championship, and then kind of how the Firecrackers have evolved after that?
Well, it all starts with Gary Wardine. He's the one that created the Firecrackers. You had mentioned earlier about me, something about me in the program, but I always say I took over the program. I worked for Gary coming in, I believe it was late 1991. I played overseas for a year and came back, and we had a little shortstop named Robin Walker that she was a private student of mine. I had only had one softball student, but didn't really know what travel ball was. And I met Gary. I started working with some players off to the side and had about 6 students. The original cruiser coach, Vicki Smith, I worked for him in that cruiser program. So again, that my history, I don't know if you remember in our championship game with your dad a couple years ago, I just told him, we have to mention Mickey. We have to mention Mickey Smith, the origin of the cruisers. So Gary brought me in the early 90s, player development. I can say proudly now that he knew everything I didn't know, because he wouldn't let me do anything off the field. It was all about just teaching how to play the game, admin, managing. Oh man, Ches, no way was I even close to qualified for that stuff. So we started working together there, player development, and then boom, first national championship in 1994. So we've been at it a couple of years. He recruited really good players. They came in. And so again, I think the deception there is you think you're better than you are. So you win and you think everything's going to fall in place, and you start hearing someone, right? We do well the next year at 16s. That's where JT picked off the 3 players. Things are rolling along. I had a whole 4 or 5 years under my belt. And then Gary called, and I think this is a relatable story to all coaches. Gary calls me in September. I'd just taken a break, went to go see one of my friends play. And he told us that 9 players went and tried out for the Gordon's Panthers, and they all made the team, and we had 4 players left on our team. So I
Oh,
like to
wow.
explain to coaches when they're talking about the injustice of, whatever they're not getting, whatever. So we went from the penthouse to like nothing. And the question actually in 1996, Gary asked me if do we fold the team? And so going through those, not hardships, but the tough times and having to start at the bottom, especially at 18 and under, because we came into that, now it's our first year at 18 and under, right? And so we had to earn every bit of respect, every bit of political respect, whatever it was. It was all about building relationships. So early success in the 90s, started really low. Okay, great. We'll come in at 18s and do well. Oh, no. We didn't. I think my friend Mike Andrea had a good comment for me, and I think 99 Nationals asked me to come learn slapping from him. And I told him, if I've got to learn slapping, it's another thing I'm proud of. If I've got to learn slapping to be successful, Mike, I'm freaking going back to baseball. And I said that to Mike Andrea, and so he didn't say anything to me. And then, okay, I asked him, why do I need to learn slapping? And he looked at me and he said, hey, if all you're going for is 25th place, then you don't need to learn anything else, right? And so he just shot me right in the head. And so again, what I'm describing is that learning curve, right? You're confident, you believe in yourself, but there's a lot you don't know, right? There's a guy, Gary Hanning, whips the crap out of you, all this stuff. And so you go through that learning curve. But then in 2002/3, I took over the program. Gary had retired, both his daughters had moved on. And so Megan Willis was part of the first team, my first coaching experience, like I say, cut my coaching teeth with her team, fortunately or unfortunately for her. And that was the beginning of just change. I think kind of our playing operations. I think we started to kind of empower the brand a little bit more. And then I think the key word there, Chez, is culture. Started to realize that on a weekend-to-weekend basis, when you're doing this 40-something years or weekends a year, that it has to feel great to me. The stress that we deal with is part of what we do, but it can't own what we do. And so, just kind of take it through the 2000s, a lot of great teams, a lot of great experiences. We had a block of about 13 years where we had some pretty good success that created a standard. And to be honest with you, now I enjoy honestly trying to make the softball world better for others, as corny as that may sound, but breaking down some barriers, working with people that typically, because you compete against them on the field, you can't have a relationship with them off the field. So, I'm really proud of the collaboration I have with Mike Stith and the Batbuster organization. And no, we're not going to merge. It's nothing like that. It's just coexisting to make the sport better. So that's a quick kind of 25-year, I think, take you through.
Yeah, a snapshot. I do have to ask you one question. Megan wanted me to ask you about something that happened in particular while she was playing for you. And you may or may not remember, but she has a question in particular about pitch calling. And it was a story where it was after a game. She came to your room and she was questioning your pitch calling. And do you remember this particular incident? And what can you tell me from that story?
I remember, I don't know if it was pitch calling, but I do remember clearly this was a defining point in my early coaching career. We had a game, it was a national tournament, and I was coming back to my hotel, and Megan was waiting outside my room, and she communicated with me her feelings on that. She, first of all, empathy. She understood what I did. So again, I would advise people, before you want to make a point and someone to hear you, acknowledge someone else. And I don't know if she remembers that, but she acknowledged that she understood why I did what I did. And then she gave me her feelings on it. And she communicated me in a way where, sometimes right off the field, it's not best to approach your coach right afterwards. You're still in that, it's like that 24-hour rule, right? But she instantly cut through me and earned respect of, I realized that, you have to listen to a player. And so if we're talking about the same incident, which I think we are, I think that maybe the details of it, but yeah, it was for me realizing, man, and I knew that right now you're not talking at players and to players, that this one had the confidence. Yeah, it was self-confidence to make a statement to me, and not complaining and not bitching about things. It was, I have something to say to you. And Megan still does that. She still
Yeah, I know.
It was actually a very important part early in my career, because I always remembered that. And again, having the confidence and courage not only to say what you need to say, but say it the right way, right? Starting with I understand, because empathy really is just, again, looking through somebody else's glasses, right? Just understanding how they're seeing something. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was definitely a turning point for me.
Yeah, she credits her ability to call pitches thanks to you. Do you care to comment on that?
Well, I've been a guy, again, how to play the game, right? So I'm obsessive in how we play it, but um, maybe to result fault, I've allowed our catchers to call pitches in national championship games. I just always felt like it's more about what we teach you and watching you do that than controlling something to an outcome. And that's just my point of view. Listen, easy for me to say we've had success. There's a lot of coaches that are trying to work their way up, and I get that. But and then how about this? You've got that IQ back there. So for me, and again, it gets into debate, right? Because there's so many debates in softball. But a catcher who is capable can smell the batter, can be right there. You can sense what's going on, and there was nobody better than Megan. And then
Mm-hmm.
obviously watching her go on and work with Kat and gain that trust. Boy, yeah, I would feel horrible right now if I would have not given her that opportunity to realize, yeah, I kept it down, right? But yeah, that was definitely an experience, and that was my first year of coaching. So that type of autonomy for our catcher and that defense, even to call the pickoffs and everything else, right? I think that's what my win is sitting back in a championship game and watching the way you're playing that game, not afraid to lose and going after the competition. Whatever happens, happens.
Mm-hmm. I think that, quite honestly, from what I've seen, is kind of a unique stance when it used to not be that way. Um, there's so much control from the bucket in terms of pitch calling and play calling. I think sometimes players miss out on building up that IQ because they're not able to feel the game instead of it's kind of being instructed at them.
Yeah, and how could we combine it, right? Because if you look at the college game, I think more of the term of a pitching manager, more of a pitching coach, just to take it out of the mindset that always addressing what the pitchers are doing physically. But let's talk about who are the batters coming up. What do you intend to do with them? I think as a coach, you have to adapt because you want to give autonomy and teach autonomy to your players, and you have to recognize when something needs direction. So I think
Mm-hmm.
there's always a balance of that. Ultimately, yeah, autonomy is what we're going for. But if whatever it takes for it to be efficient, ideally, if we could look at ourselves as teachers and know that there's a curriculum. So at whatever point, whether it's 12s and 14s, we do have to walk. It's like teaching someone to drive, right? So I'm sure it's not fun for a 16-year-old and to have their parents, every micromanage everything, but we're scared. We don't want to die in the car. And then
Mm-hmm.
how long does it come before you're driving on your own? And that's just for me. Like I said, that's just something that's worked for me. Everybody has their own wins and their own takeaways as far as what they're trying to get out of their coaching.
Segueing into some other great softball players that came from the Firecrackers organization, can you speak to a few of them and kind of what makes them so unique and special that they just become these kind of legacy players?
It's easy to talk about the ones that are in the media, Ches, because they are there, and I think we always need to mention them, but I think they fall under different categories. And then I instantly start thinking of Courtney Fasadi and back in the '90s, and we had Veronica Nelson for us for a summer, and they just showed her highlight
Mm,
home run against Jenny and Jessica Schultz. Gosh, there's been so many that have been so good. Katie Carpenter's in our program for a year and did well her senior year. And these players went on, like, we're just fortunate that they passed through, hopefully teach them a little something while they're with us. We've had so many softball IQs, as we're talking about. Holly Wilson still to this day is one of the smartest hitters and smartest players we've ever had in this program. I mean, just incredible. Melissa Roth was the one that came in and undersized, not a strong arm, not fast, and a two-time All-American that hit a ton of home runs in college. So there's a lot of them that we're really, really proud of. And like I look at it as combining forces. So never to ever take credit more than just what we do, provide a platform, try to teach them what we know. But we've been really lucky to have some special players in this program.
when you think about them, and it's what is one defining characteristic or common thread between them that you see?
Empowering their dignity. So finding that what is truly beautiful on the inside of them and allowing that to come out because they're different. You know this. I would
Mhm.
imagine if you still go with Megan Willis into a restaurant and you make her laugh, pretty much everyone knows around her that she's laughing. You
Yes,
know,
still to this day.
allowing them to be themselves, allowing whatever that is. So you're not cookie cutting. You're teaching the game a certain way. But I think that ultimately, Ches, it's not anything for being gender specific or any type of category like that. It's because they are truly great people. Again, the type of player you were, what you're doing right now is of value. That is the number one thing that I'm proud of watching these young ladies. And how do I not start with just what Lauren Chamberlain is standing for, right? And what she does and how she uses her platform. So watching that and using her as that example is absolutely the most rewarding part of being able to experience a relationship with them.
Tony, you've always been kind of like a big picture guy. And there's a lot of things going on with COVID-19 and the Black Lives Matter movement. Do you address those issues with those players? And if so, how do you create a safe space to have that discourse and those discussions with your athletes?
So in our own environments, it's a really delicate area because there's such a small margin for error nowadays of saying something that either triggers an argument or I'd like to say just a difference of opinion, right? But we know what it's like to have a discussion with a difference of opinion. There's a lot of pain out there right now. So if I start with the quarantine, this is the one-time thing for this generation, I hope. And so it was such an unusual space to be in. Might sound a little funny, Ches, but it's like the things that we try to teach in crisis time on the field, right? So right now, during the quarantine, what's going to happen to us naturally? We were doing weekly meetings with our teams. And so what are the natural feelings, right? Just like when you play a ball game, what are the natural feelings? When you're competitive, high fire, you got that little or big B on the inside of you, you're reacting to your strikeout, you're reacting to a loss a certain way. And then what's the learned behavior? Well, with the COVID-19, a lot of that fear initially, and then the, being isolated. And so we talked about finding purpose. We talked about recognizing where we're at on the inside, and then, looking to help others get out of your own headspace, challenge people to not go by things that they feel, but, learn new things, maybe a new instrument. We were sending out, and I say we, but Juliana, who works for us, we were sending out like coloring pages, for our younger kids to just be creative, get in their right brain or something. So that was something that we wanted to address, and we really wanted to know that our players were there, particularly for my team. I would just do a simple 1 through 10 scale, ask them how they're doing every 2 weeks, knowing that a 5 means it's their way of saying, I need a little help. We also have on our website a mental awareness page. Has a suicide awareness hotline. So a lot of information that our families can go through. What I've never done with this organization is taken our standard or what has worked for me personally in my life or with our team, and I don't shove everything down everyone's throat. I felt like that was I knew that when we expanded the Firecrackers, I always wanted to look at it like a buffet, Ches. Like if we could put lobster and filet mignon and everything that people want around them, and they're just overwhelmed with all the good stuff, but we see them pick it. Our job is to put it around them. And so with issues like that, we try to do that as well. So that's how we handled the quarantine. If I go over to the current issue right now, I'll be honest with you, I'm of that generation where I got to watch where I'm at, right? And I'm so respectful. And so I'm going to be honest with you, my advisors on the current issue are everybody, but I'm really listening to the younger generations. And there's a conversation that I still would like to have with even Lauren that she doesn't know this, but just, advisory means just your opinion on things. And right
Yeah.
now it's about one thing, and it's about that issue, and it's about Black, and it's not about anything else. And this is something that my son even taught me, Dad, you can talk about what you do with the Firecrackers, you can talk about, but it's about one thing right now, and we need to respect that because as a society, we have an opportunity to create this change. And so an interesting platform for myself, which people may or may not understand, we have a lot of people that we're protecting on the inside of the Firecrackers. And so I've chosen to keep the noise out of the Firecrackers because we have 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds, little brothers and sisters that are still learning. And I'd like you to tell you that all of their coaches and parents know how to talk about these issues, but I also have made the choice to not spark the dialogue in case there's just something more volatile and there's less of a safe place. So it's a really, really, really tricky place to be. But as of this point, I've chose to take those conversations privately with where we need to address them. But right now the issues are at hand. And I'm proud to be part of an industry that's addressing a lot of things just in our own way. But yeah, sensitive time right now, Ches.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I know it's, going to the softball field, and it's great that we're all out there, but we know that there's some larger issues at hand. And while this may be an escape for a little bit, we also cannot forget about our Black sisters and teammates who are on the field with us, who are affected more closely to those issues.
Absolutely. I mean, look, you and I are minorities and we're darker skinned, but it's not even about that. It's about our Black friends, and it is only about that. So absolutely. And I hope that, again, we can get to that part. Something that, again, that I will say will transcend is just in general. And I always say it sounds corny. And for those people that don't know me on the field and you know me on the field, it's good to know there's kumbaya on this hand, and then there's hand is taking care of business, right? We win games and blah, blah, blah. But the language of love, loving people, caring, if you want to be heard, care about somebody, and then they want to hear you, and so the noise, that's something that I know. And the noise right now is an indication of how much pain there is, and that all has to purge. I hope we get to a point to where after that pain and we address that pain is that we can care about each other and we can listen. Again, I'm an older guy in the softball industry, and so for me to put it out that I learned from my 28-year-old son, I want to have a conversation with Lauren. I was a little protective of her at first because this could be kind of interesting space to be in, right? Because you're not going to make everyone happy. But, Lauren cares about people. What she did with her ESPN Rise issue, like she cares about the welfare of other people. So I just encourage people, like, we have something to say, but I care about you first. Empathy. I put your glasses on first. And then maybe you might want to hear what I have to say. And if we can, there's nothing like those pictures right now of hands on each other. And like I always say, arm in arm, like Mike Stith and I aren't like arms around each other, but we're working arm in arm for softball right now to make sure that it's, I heard a powerful term this morning that it's no longer about power over, it's about power with. And that's something that, again, I mean, to softball, to take our positions, right, of what we've been able to do, but create that so that there's more unity. So, I hope in my heart, like I say, you and I are minorities, but right now our races aren't even the ones at hand. And so I'm just here. I'm here to support everyone that we need to, and all work together to make sure that we're all have an equal chance, right?
Right on. Speaking of Mike Stith, and we've seen a number of leagues pop up across the country: the Texas Fastpitch League, the Heart of America Elite Fastpitch League, another league in the South. Is there going to be a California League on the horizon, Tony? And if so, can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, so the CFL has already been out. There's been a press release. You can go to cflfastpitch.com. There'll be more coming out. But yeah, that was launched a week ago. We also, again, we initially launched it, but then we just took a week off to it. We didn't want to focus on anything else other than the social issues at hand, let those things play out. We reinitiated some press this week. CFL is now in play. It's the California version of this league. What I will say is that, again, even with the logos that we put on a CFL, there's 5 leading organizations that have initiated the participation, right? It's not about them all having equity or anything like that, but I want people to understand, some people use terms like it's an exclusive group. No, we're the ones trying to pave the way. We're letting everyone know that we believe that we have the leverage to create a new direction without any fear of consequence. And so we're doing that for people. The CFL is also, I think, a culmination of a lot of conversations, Ches, that have been taking place for years. I mean, conversation has always taken place. So whether we're in I would say in the old school at the barbershop talking, politics or change with the sports or whatever, there's always conversation in softball about what needs to be better, right? Even I would like to know in our own organization, what could be better and how can we be better for people? So I would say all of these leagues that are popping up, and the Gulf Coast League was the one I think you did mention, but all of these leagues popping up is a sign that there's needs to be just more. It's nothing against what's already here, but there needs to be more. But this was not, there's no mastermind behind all of this. This was not all right, everybody, let's go. It was more kind of interesting, but there are some central forces of communication. And I have to start with Scott Smith, with the Texas Bombers, what his daughter Jade has done as far as the logos and a lot of the branding. So you're starting to see some consistencies, right? And some things that are kind of like, so we're looking forward to what it can be, knowing that, hey, we didn't wait until it was perfect, or else we'd never make the move. And so it's another collaboration to try to create more purposeful play, something a little more than what we've been used to. So just kind of adding to the landscape.
Mm-hmm. How do you see this impacting softball across the country?
First thing that stands out in my mind is the inclusive part of it, that if we can create this central core of data, statistics, to where an obscure base team, maybe an obscure area or a desolate area that, normally those players would have to go play for this organization or our team or somewhere, to give the lesser known coach and the player that isn't in these areas where all the other players are, but all of a sudden they're in these leagues and their stats now are funneled up, just like in any particular college, in any particular conference. And now here she is next to Sierra Romero hitting 22 home runs. And who is this kid? So if we can help take that light and give more power to these teams and enable more organizations to have more holding power with their players and shine more light on their players. Again, it's more of that ultimate balance. We all have what we need, the people that are creating these leagues. It isn't about getting more for ourselves. It's about allowing others to have what they need for them. So that's number one for me, is that equal share. And also that there's no real protectiveness of, you have to earn your way in. So if my team doesn't play well and doesn't perform well enough, we're not in postseason play, Mike or anyone. So there's nothing to protect. And again, that's just something that we felt, we wanted to create a little bit more across the board.
Awesome. Yeah, thinking about this league and just Texas in particular, and talking with a lot of coaches and how the teams are moving around to like the different regions, I can't help but go back to my own experience in playing travel ball in Southern California. That's what we did. It's basically we moved from region to region. It was unspoken that you would play in each other's tournaments. And then that's kind of how the talent was able to keep, and it exploded, and you saw it. And I'm hoping, and maybe I'll ask this question to you, is that something that could potentially happen with teams having a more steady schedule? They're playing the best teams in their regions. Could we see just even more talent emerge from some of these regions?
Yeah, one of the things that excites me is this is not just a good disruptive move with coaches that have the leverage. We're just one part of that. There is an infrastructure part of this, because I've always longed, and anyone in softball knows that, look inside softball organizations and you don't see corporate structure. You see softball structure. You see somebody killing themselves to manage the finances, out of pocket. Yeah. And then from a business standpoint, for myself, it was embarrassing, right? Because I wasn't equipped. The learning curve is there, and I'm really proud of the progress that's taken place. In this particular situation, we have the infrastructure in the system, so database management, how the systems all communicate, even from region to region, that's being built. But to get to that point, what I'm really proud of is what Sean Brashear has brought to the table and some of our advisors, and that is something that will compare to NCAA or even pro sports, right? So like if we're going to keep statistics, and this is again because we know softball dialogue, we're keeping statistics and we're in a drop dead game and somebody hits a home run, and then now that stat doesn't count, and we know that someone's going to be upset. But then you go over to our communications director, Sean, and he goes right to you and goes, so what happens when the Astros, play and they hit a home run in the fourth inning and the game's rained out? It doesn't count. That's just the way it is. We all understand that. So I'm proud that we're replicating models that you see more at higher levels of sports, because then it can create that consistency and then, yeah, Ches, that ultimately, and this is just way down there now. This is a Tony Rico thought. If there could be a point to where, yeah, there was league structure and a league schedule, and just kind of really in the pocket to minimize traveling, minimize expenses, but still allow the teams, because this is also something we're baking in, allow the teams that need to travel. There are teams in Arizona, and it's a smaller base region, right? So they travel to California a lot, and they do that for competition, and they need to do that for competition. We're lucky in Southern California with the competition that we have. So how can we enable that type of routine for a team that needs that, but also help a team in Arkansas that just wants to acquire points, right? To be able to be relevant in the standing, to not always have to travel to Texas or somewhere else. So there's a lot of things on the inside. That's some great collaborations of some great minds. To be honest with you, usually at the beginning of meetings, I'm talking about how we all relate to each other. And then I just shut up and listen, because we've got some amazing people putting this together.
Will there be a point where these regions face off against each other?
Everything's possible, right? Again, we originally, and again, it's an inclusive project, right? So we've given everybody in America an opportunity to be part of this. This is not a closed door anything, right? So again, open arms, open doors. Please join us. And then what you'll see is people that have just chosen to join us. Our only mission is to create, again, more balance within the industry, and we're going to continue to listen to what's happening in the industry. Yes, I see a possibility for a strong possibility for the regions, even if it's being creative. One region just having something like the Texas California football games, right? So in the region, but also, yeah, there's right now something in place that is more of a GPS, if you were to put it in today's terms. We would love to provide for all organizations and people in softball across America a template and a roadmap for them to be able to build their operations. And so to take all of these different levels of success. So if you took like the Bombers, Batbusters, and Firecrackers, just as 3 examples of what we've been able to do, and be able to help all of the people that would love to do that with their organizations, branding, building, things like that. So we would love to provide a central source of information so that people can be able to do this, right? So they can be efficient in building what they want to be, and have a good model to follow. So I see it going to a lot of areas, including regional competition and things like that. But a lot of that still has to be answered, because the TFL disrupted this thing pretty fast. There was no TFL talks 4 months ago. So it all happened within the quarantine. They needed to make it happen. And they're kicking off play right now, which is great. But there's just a lot in front of us, Ches. I will just tell you, we have committed people that are willing to answer, and we want to listen. We're listening to people. So we want to answer the call of our industry.
When do you see the kickoff date for the CFL? Is there a date?
So it'll happen this fall. Again, Texas had a need because they were regionalizing their play, so they needed to kick off things a lot earlier. Most of these other leagues have a little later timeline, so we can make sure we keep things in the oven and build the things the right way so that it delivers. So I'd say the fall is when you're going to see a lot of the league structure kind of kick off. During that time, we're just making sure that we communicate with the leaders of each region as they request and as they seek that, because we're not forcing anything on them. Because it's only a timeline before, if we don't take care of what we call rules of engagement, we don't want just more implosive, groups of people. They're on a timeline, and in 2 years they're bickering like everything else. We have to teach softball. Again, sounds funny, how to care about each other so we can listen to each other, so that we can talk to each other, so we can create change. And all of this is on a timeline with all of these regions. We've got to make sure that we have the right rules of engagement.
Last question. Can you talk a little bit about Firecrackers on Demand and how that serves the firecracker community?
Yeah, so I don't know. I think I call it our website of Tony craziness, and it's not all about Tony, but capture it, right? We have a production director, Lucas Wilde. He's got a film degree from England, and he's a 29-year-old, just a phenom. He tells a certain story that I feel it in here when I watch his work. And so he came in through another one of our employees, Juliana, and Lucas started to capture some of our stuff on film. and it just kind of got me. And he likes our culture. He likes, the things that we try to stand for. So he asked to be part of what we're doing. So I said, all right, well, let's meet in the mornings and we'll just pick topics. And he's production minded. So if you kind of imagine, it's, hey, what are we going to shoot and what are our topics? And he walked in the first day and I said, turn the camera on. And he said, what? And I said, just turn it on. So anybody watches any of the FC on demand, and we had ran it free through the quarantine so that people could just experience, have things to do. And it's a little bit of everything on what we've done, whether it's fielding, hitting, defense, pitching philosophies, training. It's a lot of a little bit of a lot of areas that I feel it would be like capturing, what your dad's been able to do in his coaching time. Or like I said, go back to Dean, like get the secrets from, like you listen to these podcasts with, the great guitar players or the Rolling Stones or anything, you listen to like their insight and what went into it. And so that's what FC On Demand is. It's insight into how we've been able to create our standard, and it's designed to help people help themselves. It's not just information that you watch and go, I don't know how to do this, but hopefully you say to yourself, I never thought about it that way. And that makes sense. And I think I'll try that. And then I like it when they come back and say, hey, that works. Because we're not forcing them, right? I mean, I could take that angle, but I'd say, look, it's like I look at it like the real estate. You see the successful real estate people. They hold the seminars by the airport. And you're first like, wow, they're just trying to take my money. Rico's all about the money, and what is that? And so you just kind of let that sit there and go, well, wait a minute. Ask somebody who went to the seminar if they walk out of there said they just took my money. But what we like is that when people come out of the FC On Demand, it changes their way of thinking. And then my whole thing is like, well, is your experience better? Are you better in championship play? How are your bunt defenses? Are you approaching pitching and hitting the same way as you were before? Recruiting, all of these types of things. So, and we have made it available. It's not Firecracker exclusive. Firecrackers get it within their memberships here, but it's available to everyone. All we're trying to do is help. But it's Tony Craziness and about 140 videos of all different types of softball topics.
I love it. Look, I am all about pioneering in the space. And like you said, it's about capturing. I think that's like one reason why I kind of started this podcast is I've had so many amazing conversations with some of the best minds in softball, and even just outside of softball. They're connected, and they have such valuable insight and information. And I feel like this is just such a great way to be a fly on the wall to those conversations, because I think there is, a portion of the softball community that may not feel like it's inclusive. And I know with this, it's like anybody has access to it. You can just, listen on your walk, in your car, like on your way to the field. You take it how you want it. This is just the information. And like with you, decades of experience and being able to share that through the power of video, I think is awesome. And I wish more coaches would do it, because, there's also a certain level of fear that's involved with that too, because it's the unknown. I know if I would have asked my dad, I don't know how he would feel about it.
And how do you make him comfortable, right? That's what producers do. Producers aren't there to tell musicians what they're doing wrong, kind of like what softball coaches do, and make you more self-conscious. Kind of an interesting comparison. They're here to make you feel as great as possible and make it easy for you. So, what are podcasts? They're just conversations, right? And so if you can have a conversation, but you put that microphone in front of somebody and they start sweating because now it's like a TV thing and it's a little bit different. I enjoy, and I would imagine you do too, I enjoy creating that comfort for people. On our YouTube channel, we do a lot of podcasts. I've had them with Sue Inquist, with Natasha Watley, a lot of different different topics and subjects, but I just enjoy the conversation. So I appreciate what you're doing, because again, a lot of us are known for what you see on the field, but not only getting to know what's on the inside of people softball wise, but also, there's something I call flip side. All of a sudden you find out something about someone that you never knew. to know like JB Slimp, I'm going to embarrass him, but to know that he is one hell of a guitar player. Are you kidding me? Like, to not know what JB does and then kind of what he can do with that guitar. And I said, now when I look at you in the third base box, I see a guy out there in the arena, not just a guy I trying to think about what he's going to do with a bunt play. So I enjoy that part of it, Ches, and I think I agree with you. Even if it's on video, you could listen to it in your car on Bluetooth, right?
Yeah.
With just conversations, and kind of replaces the old day of what I used to call talk radio. Just listen to people in the industry. So
yeah, I still remember the rides home with my dad playing the talk radio sports. Jim Rome and who was the other guy? Last name Duggan, maybe?
I go way back. So some of these old school people, since I'm older than most of the parents now, but out here in Southern California, there was KFI, there was Jim Healy, there was a lot of these guys. But it was talk radio. Maybe that's what some of these young ladies need, because there's not as much talk radio now. So now they're just getting the car ride home on what their batting was like for a 0-for-3 game, right? We need more podcasts in these cars for the car ride home, Ches.
Yeah, there you go. You keep at it. I'll keep at it. We'll just create a little softball library.
The girls, right? We slip into the girls, go, hey, Dad, they're going to talk about hitting. Boom, and put them on. And then the girl writes to us and goes, man, I didn't hear anything on the way home. You just listened to talk about something with Megan. It's kind of cool. So,
yeah, totally. Tony, would you like to add anything else, either about yourself or the Firecrackers, on what are your plans and goals going forward?
I'm just really appreciative. The only thing that explains my life, Ches, is that I've been chosen to do things, because I look at people that, they go through so many things and the hardships and my life hasn't been easy. My story is not a silver spoon story, but I just feel like I'm my age. I still do what I love. I live like a little kid. Yes, we have responsibilities. Yes, it's kind of like stepping in dog doo-doo, right? You just have to wash it off. There's doo-doo everywhere, but you got to watch where you're walking, and you got to wash it off, because if you don't, you go to bed and you smell it and you're griping about things. So I'm really appreciative of all the people we're working with, the equity and sweat equity of all the firecracker coaches, the coaches that we're working with across America. Whatever perception you've had of like one term is like the softball mafia or whatever it is, I'm just here to say that there are more people at the top right now working hard for others than ever before. And I'm just really, really excited for the future. Whatever that might hold, we're here to serve you. So we're going to keep listening.
Well, thank you, Tony. For the people who are interested in knowing more about the Firecrackers and what you guys are up to, where should they go?
So firecrackersoftball.com is our website. We've got FC On Demand, Firecrackers On Demand, if you wanted to check out. There's a lot of free content on there as well, so it's not all about pulling you in. It's about getting you to experience something and decide if it's going to help you out. We got Firecrackers TV, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, everything. I just encourage people, again, take a look at it. If it doesn't sound good or it doesn't feel right, get the heck out, turn it off. But we are here to help. So lots of platforms, and hopefully we can help just increase the experience of good stuff for people across the country. I appreciate your time today, Ches. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate yours too. Thank you, Tony. Have a good one.
Welcome. You too. Thank you.